Welcome to Life After Trauma. Thank you so much for being here today, Lisa.
Thank you for inviting me to be here. I really appreciate it. I love getting my story out.
Absolutely. And let's start right there. Can you tell us how this has all started for you?
Well, my abuse, I had all abuse except sexual abuse, and it was within my family. So it was between my brother, he was the biggest offender, and then my parents. And so my brother was abusive, and my father didn't protect me. And then my mother later on, and I can explain that, used some of the abuse to help manage me, I guess is the way to put it. So it started as far back as I can remember. It's always been in my life. And my brother was older than me and much larger than me. And I don't really ever remember having a great relationship with him. But when in my younger years, he would be physical and verbal with me. And part of the reaction to that for me, and it's a coping mechanism that a lot of people deal with, is as I became a young teenager, I began emotionally eating. And that then triggered my mother because I was this adorable little girl who she loved to dress up. And then all of a sudden I was getting fat, according to her. And so her abuse escalated with me. And, the teenage years are always hard, without having anything going on in your life like that. But it certainly got tougher for me. And the abuse certainly escalated in my teenage years. And it so much so, and I don't know where I learned this, but I did learn at a very young age that childhood abuse is carried down, right? It's passed down. And I don't know, again, I don't know where I learned that from, but it made me in my teenage years even consider not having children because I was worried I would be someone that would carry that on. And I didn't want to do that. And then when I turned 16, my mother passed away from breast cancer. And that really changed my life. And the saddest part in that arena is that I didn't have any adults really helping me. I had no support. I had no help. My father closed down even more. As a matter of fact, at one point, my father said, I can't afford to raise you. You need to quit school and you need to go get a job. So I remember at 18, I really, like I said, I grappled with the decision of, will I have children? And, I did a lot of praying about it and I felt like I would be able to manage it. And I felt like it was okay. And so, but I knew I needed to do something with myself. So at 19, I started my healing journey and I'm 61. So it's been a long journey. And back when I was 19, there wasn't any trauma support or trauma therapy or the modalities. And so I did so much of my healing kind of on my own, kind of me and God doing it together. And I did do some healing over the years. And, when I was in my 30s and early 40s, it started to escalate a little more. I didn't have the trauma therapy, and we all need the trauma therapy. But one of the things that helped me is I took a women's childhood abuse healing workshop, like the one I'm teaching now. That really helped me to get deeper into my healing. And this is what's really surprising. At that point, I only recognized that it was my brother that was abusing me. When I was in the workshop is when my eyes got opened up to, hey, no, hey, it was my father and my mother. And that was kind of unnerving because I didn't see that before. And that's what surprised me. And that's not uncommon either. That's very common among trauma survivors. And so I did the workshop and it certainly made a difference in my life. And then a few years later, the lady that ran the workshop asked me and a good friend to run the workshop. And so we did that for 8 years. Well, yes, we helped a lot of women heal, which was amazing. But you know what happens in those workshops or anything that you're in there, you're gonna be going through some stuff too. And so that really helped escalate some of my healing. But the biggest part was probably within the last 10 years because I began to start taking trauma therapy. There's modalities, there's much more information out there, which is wonderful. And we understand trauma much more now. And I married the love of my life, who was, for the first time outside of therapy, was really my safe space. He's my normal. I call him my normal. My life wasn't normal. And so sometimes when I don't know where that line is, I'll go ask him. I'll explain to him what happened and say, is this normal? And he'll tell me. But overall, that's in a nutshell, that's kind of the story of my life. There's a lot more, details, of course, but that's kind of a general overview of it.
Yeah. Wow. That is a tough story. We actually share a lot
Oh,
of that
really?
story. Yes. I mean, I don't have a brother, so my abuse came from a different place, but
Yeah.
a lot of what you had to say
Mhm.
definitely resonates with me.
Mhm. Yeah.
So the journey,
Yeah, yeah.
the healing journey can take, I mean, personally, I don't think that the journey really ends.
Not till you take your last breath.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah,
journey. It
for
definitely
sure.
is.
And I like to say that it is a lot of work, like acknowledge that it is a lot of work. And for anybody who's listening and watching, I don't want anybody to feel like they're not doing enough. Like if you have to step back
Absolutely.
from active, like participating in healing, that is totally and completely okay.
Yes.
And it's part of the reason why the journey is so long.
Yeah, 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 exactly. I mean, I have found with my healing, I'll go deep into something and it's sometimes intense and very difficult. And then when I come out of that and, you've worked through it and there's just such a, you're liberated from it, you do need a break. You do need to have time because it takes a lot out of you because that's the thing that we found out that's so interesting about trauma is that, it's physically stored in your body as well in your subconscious. So I'm all about talk therapy. There's a place for talk therapy, but not when it comes to trauma. We definitely need to go through the modalities that work for us. And for me, it was EMDR so that you can get the trauma out of your body and out of your subconscious.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit more about EMDR?
So for me, it was really powerful. I always remember the acronym, but I don't know what the whole title is.
I know it is a long one.
It's a long one, a little tongue twister. But basically what they do is my therapist, I had her online, but they work through changing your thought process and working through those bad memories. And it's not that they try to replace the memories. They just help you to diffuse that memory. So because that's the thing, when we're triggered, we're reliving something. We're not just remembering, we're actually reliving it. And that's why we have the reaction. So EMDR helped me not to have those triggers as much, or at least if I'm triggered, that I can have that pause where I can identify that I'm being triggered and I can take a minute and kind of get myself situated and then give the right response instead of the trigger response, which could be really damaging, right?
That pause is everything.
That has been a lifesaver for me, trust me. It's been a
Mhm.
lifesaver for me. But EMDR for me was a little bit different. And when I was doing it, and I'll explain it in a minute, I asked my therapist, I said, is this normal? Does this normally happen? And she said, I haven't experienced it, but it's not wrong. And then I spoke with I talked with other people and I had another lady experience this. And what I did is I worked with little Lisa. So I worked with the younger Lisa. And how it happened is we were working on one of the memories I had. She said to me before we went into the EMDR, and I was talking to my mom, and she said, well, just tell your mom what you want to say. And I remember I felt my chest tighten up and I said, no, I can't tell my mom what I want. I'll get hurt. And she said, well, why don't you come alongside little Lisa? And that was so powerful. And it worked. So what it did is with respect, I got to tell my mother exactly what little Lisa felt like
Mm,
and what she had to say. She had a voice because that's one of the things that gets shut down. And that was really powerful for me.
yeah.
I don't know exactly why, but I know that really worked for me. And then for teenage Lisa, I did something a little different where I wrote her a letter and I just validated everything that she had gone through.
Mm,
She needed to hear validation because
yeah.
the little Lisa got abused different than the teenage Lisa.
That's really powerful.
It
Uh,
was.
I remember the first time that I had a, we'll say, profound experience with my inner child.
Mhm.
And it was heartbreaking. Even
It is.
thinking about it now, it was heartbreaking. And isn't it so fascinating how you, I don't know how to phrase this, but like how you find them. Like
Yeah.
it, when I found my inner child, mentally I could see her
Yes.
curled up under a bed,
Yep.
like hiding. And
Yep.
it was like, oh my gosh, come out, you're okay.
Yeah,
Like,
you're safe.
yeah, yeah. I find that work so fascinating.
It was interesting because when I went in the first, say I had similar when I first saw me, little me,
Yeah.
and little me even reached up and held big me's hand. Yeah. And I saw it. And I saw my mom standing there, and my mom didn't say a word.
Wow. This is making me think down a different path here, but about how we can abandon ourselves, right? And like, I know that is something that I struggle with. And I feel like as far as the inner child goes, that's like the biggest struggle for me is self-abandonment.
Yeah.
A lot of it, like you had said, not having a voice, not being able to stand up for yourself. And
Mhm.
like, if you grew up with the abuse, you likely didn't really have a chance to do that. Um, so it
No.
takes a lot to even learn how to do that as an adult.
Yeah. It's interesting about the voice thing because I didn't realize that how shut down my voice was until probably about 6 years ago or so, maybe 7, maybe a little longer. And I was with my now husband, and we were in the car, and we were just having a conversation, and I wanted to say something to him, and I know it was something really important and maybe even a little bit vulnerable. It wouldn't come out. And it was the first time that I stopped, and I realized like it won't come out. And he said to me, "You can say it. It's okay." And I'm like, "It won't come out. It will not come out." He goes, "Okay, well, we'll just give it time." And then I thought back at that moment as I was sitting in the car, and I'm like, that's happened a lot. Either that happened or things would make sense in my head, but they wouldn't come out and make sense when I'm trying to explain it. I wouldn't be able to articulate. So we worked on it over the years. And what was interesting is about a year ago, we don't argue. We have discussions sometimes. And so there was something that happened. I don't remember what it was. And I just looked at him. I said, I just need a minute. I just need a minute. And so I went into the bathroom, and I was brushing my teeth. And as I was brushing my teeth, my throat, it literally felt like somebody took their hand and it was tightening it up around my throat. And meanwhile, I'm processing our conversation because I'm trying to figure out for me what my response is going to be, because I needed to understand why I was upset. And so, but I was processing this, my throat was getting tighter and tighter. It ached. It hurt so bad. It was the weirdest thing. And I knew, and then once I figured out in my head what it was I needed to say, and this only took maybe, a few minutes, I thought, I got to go say it right now. My throat isn't going to quit hurting until I go say it. And so I walked out and I said to him, I said, okay, I'm ready to say it. He's like, okay. And as soon as I said it, that feeling completely went away.
Oh,
Yeah.
when we have these moments where you can so clearly see
Yes.
how that trauma is stored in your body, it's just incredible.
It is. It is. And that's why when I'm doing my workshop, the number one thing that we work on first is self-awareness. Because without the self-awareness, you're not going to catch that stuff. Because how many times did I walk around throughout the years and that happened? I didn't even notice it. Didn't even notice it.
Completely. I really like that. What can you walk us through the rest of like your framework or maybe the key pieces of it?
Sure. In the workshop,
Yeah.
oh, yeah. We do some inner child work. After we do some inner child work, we do a lot of lessons. And it's because what is so important is we need to understand our trauma. Understanding our trauma is powerful. And that was something I learned in doing the tons of research I've done. And one of the things, the commonalities that kept popping up was that learning and understanding your trauma helps you heal. And that is true. And what I found is the behaviors that we do when we're triggered, you see the behaviors that are lined up with that, and you're all of a sudden like, that's because of the trauma. I was blown away at the behaviors that weren't me. They were directly coming from my trauma.
It's okay. Like Lisa,
Am I hitting on the stuff?
you are. Okay, when I first got my diagnosis for PTSD, that's basically exactly what happened. I
Yeah.
had been seeing a therapist, but in one of our sessions, she pulled out a list and she's like, "Can you look at this list and tell me if you experience these things?" And I was like, well, yeah, most of them. And she's like, that's PTSD. And it was such a surreal moment because, I mean, one, it was hard. It was hard to hear
I know.
that, but also it was in a way like freeing.
Liberating.
Because yeah, exactly, because
Hmm.
exactly what you're saying, there were things where I was always like, "What is wrong with me?
Yes.
Why am I
Yes.
reacting this way? I don't understand
And you had
other
no
people."
control.
Yes, and I'm like, "Other people don't feel this way or react this way, so what is wrong with me?"
Yes.
And so to get that and find out that, wow, this is because of this, it was, like you
Yeah.
said, so liberating.
It's empowering because
Yes.
all of a sudden there's that space between you and the trauma.
Yes.
And for me, the stuff I would do when I was triggered a lot, and when you get triggered and you do the stuff that's over the top, right? And you're looking at the person across from you and they're doing this, they're like, "Whoa." And which only triggers us more. And then you walk away going, "Why did I just act like that? Why did I behave like that?" And you feel guilty, and then you try to apologize to the person even though the person will say, "It's okay, I understand." They don't. And they can't trust you anymore because are they going to say something to you again that's going to cause you to go over the top? And then it's this vicious cycle that we get into. And that was so liberating for me. And I shared on my podcast a couple of years ago when I walked through a trigger from the very beginning. It was really weird. It was almost like I was floating up above me watching this whole thing happen. And it went in slow motion. And I watched I watched when I was triggered. And in those moments, I kept my mouth shut, which was really important. But I sat and thought, why am I being triggered? I recognized I'm being triggered. And I found out by slowing down and not responding why I was being triggered, the reason for me being triggered, which is like, okay, okay. And I was able to then respond in a healthier way
Mhm.
and not have to clean up another mess.
Exactly. That was one of the biggest lessons for me to learn was the difference between reacting and responding
Yes, big
and the
difference.
pause that comes in between those two things.
That pause is a lifesaver.
It really is. It really is. And I mean for your relationships, but also it helps you become more aware of yourself. You
It
learn more
does.
about yourself.
And you can then emotionally regulate yourself,
Yes.
right?
Yes. Definitely. Can we talk about survival mode?
Oh yeah, I lived that for many, 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 many years. Many years.
Same.
Um, yeah, I did that, and actually I had to apologize to my son
Mm.
because I did not abuse him, but I was in survival mode, and the things that we do in survival mode, we wouldn't do outside of survival mode. And so when I know when I was in survival mode, you can only think for the next minute, right? You can only think the next thing you got to do, or, you don't have the brain space to really do more than that. And it's all consuming. And then if something happens when you're in survival mode, I would just go over the top, absolutely over the top. So survival mode, I lived it until probably about 10 years ago. And it's a miserable place to be. I had that. And I also had the victim mindset.
Yeah.
I had both. And those are two things that we talk about in the workshop too, as well as self-talk.
Which is amazing. Like, those are two things that are so important. Like, literally can be life changing if
Yes.
you, yeah, for
I
sure.
had one time I had, sometimes people say things to you and it hits really hard and it kind of, hurts. But you're like, wait a minute, there's something to that though. There's something to that. And I remember, and this was the thing that kind of helped me realize I was in the victim mindset. I wasn't in a good marriage, my first marriage at all. We were both hot messes, but I was going over to this lady's house for a Bible study and we had kind of become friends. And she opened the door and said, "Oh, hi, Lisa." And I said, she said, "How are you?" And I began to just like blah about something that had happened, right?
Mhm.
And she just stood there and she kind of looked, she goes, "Wow, there's always something that's going on with you, or something like that, right?" Yeah, see, that was I'm sure that was my face, right? And it stuck me in the heart. And I thought, how could, my first thought is, how could she say that? She doesn't know my life, that kind of thing, right? And it kind of, I thought about it. It has stuck with me through the years. She was 100% right.
Mm.
By her saying that to me, though, caused me to slow down and really think about what she's saying and evaluate my life. And I didn't like what she said, but she was 100% right. I always had some drama in my life. I think that's what she said. You just always seem to have drama or something. Yeah, if I didn't have drama coming at me, I was stirring it up.
Exactly. We learn how to create it
Yeah,
because our ego wants to be in that familiar
correct.
place. This is why we have to go through the healing journey because
Right.
if we don't change what that familiar
Yeah.
is, then we're going to constantly be ending back there.
And that's the thing that's really hard for us too, is we grew up in chaos, right? And then we don't like the chaos anymore. We don't know how to change the chaos. But then as we start changing and getting away from the chaos, then it gets really uncomfortable. That transition between living in chaos and not wanting to live in it, I want the listeners to know that it's tough and it's a transition and it's definitely something that you have to work through. It's really uncomfortable because you're going to sit there thinking something's going to happen, and it doesn't happen. And we get uncomfortably comfortable or
Mhm.
comfortably uncomfortable,
Mhm.
in those settings. And, it took me a while to hold myself down onto the seat and not jump up and create chaos
Yeah.
so that I would feel that weird comfort. And now I stay away from chaos at all costs.
Yes, and you know what's so interesting is that I have eliminated 99% of chaos from my
Yep.
life. But now, when there is something that is slightly out of order, I almost feel a little OCD-ish of like,
Yes.
okay, I need to. And like, it's fine when that's only affecting me,
Yes.
but it has definitely been a learning process of when that involves somebody else.
Yeah.
So I'm not currently in a relationship, but in my last relationship, there would be something like something so small. And it
Hmm.
was like, okay, no, this is not a big deal. You need to let this go. But
Yeah.
again, this comes back to awareness.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Awareness is your superpower. I would say to the listeners, start studying about self awareness and learning if you don't know what it is or you don't have it in your life yet, but it is your superpower. It is what is
Yeah.
going to help you on your healing journey. It's going to, help you with your healing. You
Yeah.
have to have the self awareness to know all this, especially our triggers.
Yeah, for sure. So, what actually helped me become more self aware was getting back into my body. And I did that, like, where my journey started was actually with yoga. Um,
Mm.
I found that doing yoga, it forces me to be present and it brings me back into my body. When I first started, it brought me into my body in a way that I had never been there before.
Oh, wow.
And that is what helped me be able to become aware of what was
Hmm.
happening, not only in my body, but then also because there is a mindful approach to it. So then it also helped me notice more of my thoughts as well, my
Yeah.
mindsets.
Yeah, I just learned over the last probably 6 or 7 years that I'm an overthinker. I thought
Yeah.
everybody did that, right? I thought everybody did that. Everybody thinks like that, you know? Everybody makes a mistake and ruminates on it for 2 weeks and beats themselves up, and doesn't everybody do that? Oh my gosh, when I realized that we don't have to do that anymore,
Hmm.
and we do have to find ways not to do that. We do have to find ways to, manage our thoughts and our actions.
Yeah, which comes back again to the emotional regulation.
Yeah.
Like that was another huge, huge moment for me when I learned how to do that, which
Yes.
that was pretty recent for me. But wow, did that ever change my life? Being able to one recognize when I was having a really strong emotion, like the one that I'm thinking of. So it was in my breakup after this relationship that I mentioned. You'd have those moments where like usually it comes at night and you're sitting on the
Right.
couch and all of a sudden you just get like this feeling of panic being like, no, I have to message him. And like
Yes.
and in those moments I'm like, okay, you need to stop.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
this is where the pause comes. And I just sat there and I forced myself to breathe
Yes.
and, cry for however long I needed to cry. And like that feeling, it will pass.
Yes.
It will pass, or at the very least, the intensity will go down. And then you can make a more clear decision. But
That's the part that's hard is the intensity. My reaction used to be I would just do it. It's like I had to like get that pressure release almost.
Mhm.
And so we have to find a different way to do that pressure release. And like you said, breathing's huge for me. And I also had a coach one time. He did say something really wise to me that really kind of opened my eyes, because I don't know if this is necessarily common with trauma people, but I thought very black and white. I was very limited in the way I thought. And
Mhm.
he said to me one time, Lisa, you think in black and white an awful lot. You need to add more color. And it was one of those moments too. I'm like, that means something. I gotta think on that a little bit. And he was right. And what it meant to me is I needed to think differently. Like so often I felt like I was walking up against a wall, and I couldn't get past this wall. And I knew I needed to get past the wall. And I was only looking one way. I thought I had to bust through the wall. But if I would have just looked to the right, I could see that I could go around the wall. But I wasn't looking to the right. I was only looking forward. That was my black and white thinking. My color
Mm.
thinking was going around. I could look over here and there's another way.
Seeing
So
all the possibilities.
right, right. Opening up my mind, because I still will go there. If something happens, my mind will want to automatically go to that very, oh my gosh, it's just this one thing. I have to go, okay, stop, breathe, give it a minute, let it pass, and then look to see what other possibilities are there. And my mind will open up and see other possibilities.
Yeah, for sure. Once that intensity goes down,
Yes.
then
You got to
yeah.
get that down.
Yes, exactly. So I mean on that, we've talked about breathing. I also find that movement, just going
Yes.
outside for a walk.
Yes.
Yeah, or even if you call somebody that's close to you that you can trust, that you feel safe with.
Yes.
Yeah.
Dancing. Sometimes I literally I'll just put
So
on
fun.
music and I'll just dance, because movement helps get that intensity out of your body, helps get that trauma out of your body. But you're right, walking is one of the best. Getting out, getting fresh air, vitamin D, movement. It doesn't have to be a difficult walk. It
No,
doesn't have to be a
walk
long walk.
around the block.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
that's
Yeah.
it. It
Yeah.
can literally be 5 minutes and you will feel the difference afterwards.
A lot of times, what I'll do if I feel like I'm getting really intense, I'll go outside and I'll play ball with my dogs, throw the
Okay.
ball around, and I feel like it doesn't even take that long, 5, 10 minutes. I feel
Yeah.
great.
That's amazing. We talked about this a little bit before. I'm in Canada, so I only get to do this 6 months out of the year, but
Yeah. I get
but
to do it all year.
when I when I'm, like, in the middle of my work day and I find that work is getting to be too much,
Yeah.
then I'll just step out onto my balcony and just the fresh air and the
Yes.
sunshine and just, I'll go out and I'll leave my phone in here.
Yes.
You don't wanna add more distraction or notifications or stress at that moment. Leave
Exactly.
your phone in here, go outside, take some deep breaths, and after a few minutes, it's like, "Okay, I'm alright."
Yeah. It's just getting that break from what you're doing and
Mhm.
getting a different scenery and different vibe for
Yeah,
sure. The fresh
definitely.
air is so important.
It helps so much.
Nature.
Yes, definitely. It's very calming, very peaceful,
Mhm, and it
very
grounds you.
grounding.
Mhm, that's another technique, grounding. I haven't done too much of that, but I know that, that's really important to help people get themselves centered and calm.
That's where we'll pause for today, but the conversation continues in part two coming this Friday. We'll explore how movement can support emotional regulation, how to recognize and respond to the messages your body and thoughts are sending, and what it really takes to shift out of a victim mindset. We'll also dive into setting boundaries, breaking free from survival mode, and reframing your relationship with food, all through the lens of self love and building authentic self worth. It's a powerful continuation you won't want to miss. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the show. And if today's episode spoke to you, it would mean so much if you left a review and shared it with someone who might need it. Until next time, take care of your mind, body, and soul.